when the horse stepped on it, they came boiling out, started stinging. And of course, she's freaked out, and my husband went over there.
You know, the first question.
What's your bite load?
My load. This Tyler knows his, I think.
I'll give a shout out to the Saskatraz bees, which I've been putting in from his queens. And I thought maybe I was doing something wrong because I kept getting zeros through my whole yard. I'm like, am I doing something wrong? And then I come up with one.
Good. So, well, as we get started here, we'll start with bank account.
Okay, so Kira's gone and we have, so I'm doing it we have $4,373.31 in our bank account and $195.30 in PayPal. So for a grand total of $4,568.61. And as a secretary, I don't really have anything other than the bee college is this weekend. It might be interesting to go see it, or you could help us.
What is it?
We'll talk about that.
It's, yeah.
Not much going on in the media side. Swarms are slowing way down. We've only gotten 3 swarm calls in the last 2 weeks, and fortunately 2 of them appear to be cutouts. So hopefully it'll slow down, because this time of year it turns out to be lots of cutouts and lots of, well, let's just say honeybees have very good press agents. So we end up getting anything that looks yellow and black and it flies, it's a bee, no matter what. So I do ask a lot of pictures, and people get frustrated at me when I say, can you just please send me a picture? And then I have to come back and go, no, that's not a bee. So, but other than that, there's been a few updates to the website. I've still got a couple more pictures to go.
I still see the pink eye.
There's only one picture of pink. There's only one pink hive left instead of 10. Only one. So. Yes.
Is that
Yeah, he's a club member, and he did actually, one of the other members came in and got all his hive. So he did mention that he might have some extra equipment. So he reached back out to him. I'm like, did he take everything, or do you still have equipment? If you have equipment, please reach out again and I'll blast it back out to everybody. So they found a new home. I don't think he's here. No, he is here. They picked up Jerry's hives. So.
Our vice president.
2 things. Colorado State Bee Association, colleges this weekend. I'm the coordinator for the club. We've got 5 people going. Unfortunately, if you haven't spoken up so far, all the free slots are gone. We had some free slots if we go and help set up chair tables and chairs and stuff, but those have been taken up. But I would highly recommend that you go if you can. It's up in Rifle. I've got some really good speakers this year. If you want to go, get on the website quick and get your name in there. And second, the Delta Beekeepers meets this coming Monday, the 16th at 6:30 at the Odd Fellows Hall in Delta. If you have any questions, you can go to Facebook, Delta Beekeepers, Delta Colorado Beekeepers, on Facebook, or you can come talk to me and I'll give you all the particulars. You can come up there.
Who is planning on going to this weekend to Colorado? What's that?
And Kira, he's not.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's,
So-
yeah, I know that, one of the speakers, Jamie Ellis, who is entomologist at Florida University, and so that would be worth your, just him alone would be worth your time. And, just to get together with other beekeepers, you know, if you ever can have too much of that, so I'm gonna say, oh, yeah. Anyway, as we get started, we're gonna talk, there's a number of things that are on the agenda. We'll give you some very specifics on how to increase your honey production. We'll get to that, but first of all, we'll start with nuke expectations. There, how many, this is your first year of beekeeping, first done? Well, it's what I get, so the rest of you just all beekeepers, so.
Say old, I'm just starting my second year, so. I'm ready to be your first person.
Yeah, you remember that first year that you got your beehive and you're thinking, well, I'm gonna have 3 barrels of honey at the end of the year. And we're gonna do great, you know, you have those expectations. But I'd encourage people is, and then sometimes things go well, and those of you that have multiple hives, you know, just talking to a couple of you even tonight, one is doing great, the other one is struggling, and that's typical. And you say, well, why would they do that? You gotta remember, bees will fly up to 5 miles. And where one hive does not get into the pesticide, herbicide, fungicide, the other one did. And you gotta, whenever they find a source, they go back and they tell the rest of them, we got a really good source. And so it's more than just one bee that'll do that. And so they will run out and they will collect and they'll bring back the very things that you're trying to avoid, where the other hive did not, and so it's much more viable. The other thing is, one queen has a little better genetics than the other one, and so even though they're like Tracy was talking about the Saskatraz, that's what we run, and so even in our own outfit, we have 40% of them, a little bit more than 40, bumping up closer to 50% that basically are taking care of the mites on their own, but the other 50% are not, so we have to treat. And if you don't, and some of them, it's just no rhyme or reason that we can tell why they're struggling, but there's a number of things that you can do to help them. We'll get to that in just a minute. So new expectations are this: you want to be able to have a hive strong enough by the end of the summer to go into the capability of they have produced enough honey for themselves to overwinter. In other words, you're going to get them to about 100 pounds that between the 2 double deeps. Usually a new beekeeper has a lot of foundation to draw. So you're new at it. So all your foundation is brand new frames, empty frames. So what I tell people is when you have brand new foundation that you're drawing out, it takes the bees approximately the same amount of resources to draw out the comb as it is to fill the comb. So we're talking about 1 frame of foundation equals 1 frame of honey. If it's drawn comb, well, then that same amount of resources that they're bringing in, same amount of nectar, well, they'll make a whole frame of honey. It'll take them about the same amount of resources to produce 1 frame of drawn comb. So you just got to remember that. Drawn comb is like gold to a beekeeper, and keeping it in good, pristine condition through the winter, so the next year it's ready to go. And there's a number of things that you need to be aware of so that you don't get a wax moth issue. We'll talk about that in another meeting. But anyway, so if your expectation should be this: if I can get that double deep, they fill out a second double deep, and they're full of bees, and I have 10 frames of that is honey between the 2 of them. So 8 to 10 frames of honey, then you're doing well. Okay. If you're able to put a super on top of those after 2 double deeps and put a super and they give you some honey, you're doing above average. There's so many things that depend on that. Forage for one of those. Some of you are in places that there is a lot of forage year round. Some of you it's seasonal. If you're next to a commercial farmer, whether it's an orchard or whether it's a hayfield, the commercial guys, especially in the valley, they do not want their hay to bloom until the very last cutting. So that once that hay starts blooming, they're going to cut it, and then there goes your resources. So that's if you are in Palisade area, East Orchard Mesa, then there's, forage early on, when all the trees are blooming, all the orchards are blooming, there's a lot of resources coming in. After that, it kind of slows down, and some places slows a lot down, there's very little that's coming in. Unless you are one of those that sitting right next to a lavender farm. And then, or on a ditch bank, but even the ditch banks in that area, they spray the weeds, and so there's not a lot. If you're close to the river, then you have year-round forage. So those of you that have your apiary close to a river, that you have found probably the sweet spot in the valley. Just be thankful, because a lot of people don't have that. But other than that, there is sporadic nectar coming in. And so that will at times be good, at times not so good. Yeah.
So if a bee flies up to 5 miles, what's close to a river?
I would say if you're within that quarter mile. See, the bees are opportunistic, just like we are. I'd rather go to the refrigerator than the grocery store. If I have to go to the grocery store, then I have to. And you gotta remember that each trip takes much more time.
Sure.
But a forager, and right now, if you're in a place during this time of year, the June, and then the first half, 3/4 of July, where the light is the longest, that their flight time is much longer. And right now, if you're in an area that has a lot of forage, well, you're gonna be making a lot of honey right now. You're gonna notice, how many have already put a second super on top of your beehives? Anybody? Second super, yeah, so that is, so you understand what I'm talking about. How many got more than 2? 3?
Three of my hives are all by water. Ones I have at my house, I'm like 300 yards from the gun. My stuff's kind of slow there. I got 4 hives that are over the end of Union Week. And they're boiling over. I got one that's down on the very corner by the duck pond. Every 2 weeks, I gotta add another super. In fact, I gotta do a split when I'm
That's a terrible problem.
Terrible problem.
I don't know, we're all listening to this and say, I'm sure glad I'm not that guy.
If it's too much, I'll move some stuff there.
So, and that's, mixed bag, and it is location, like you're saying, some are doing better than others, and so that's what I'm saying, so you're, that. And every year we're drawing out comb, right? Every year we're drawing out comb, and so we're gonna talk about some of the best ways to do that. And one of the most productive ways, so this is a box of brand new comb, and I'm still selling frames of brood, or not brood.
I'll take the.
I was selling frames of brood, I quit a couple weeks ago, because a couple things, but anyway, so blanks and boxes. So $3 for, and that's double wax, pure coat in frames. They're glued, 5 staples. That means a staple in bars, so they don't pop off. And boxes, unassembled boxes, I think 15, right? And then blank. So if you need some more woodenware, let me know. You got a bunch. And we're putting together some boxes too, and I think we might be able to start selling assembled wax dip boxes if you're interested in that. Yep.
Didn't have. I need to do wax every year.
Okay, so the best way to do, get this. Okay, so the best way to take the honey off of the frame is not to scrape it all the way down the foundation. Because you want to just uncap the cappings, either with a hot knife or a serrated knife. Some people use a heat gun, just pop the caps. And then some kind of device that spins the honey out, an extractor. Scraping method, I know if that's all you have, then that's what you have to do. However, when you scrape that all the way down to the foundation, then you're scraping off the wax. It takes a lot for the beads to draw out nothing. The found,
Did I misunderstand? You
yeah,
told me that it has pesticide.
if it's old wax that I don't know where it came from.
Came out of my eye.
Yeah, if it's out of your own hive, then yeah. But there, we also talked about old wax. If it's getting really old and to the point where it is, the color of it becomes dark. You see, this is still that golden brown. That's good. It starts getting darker and darker. And I didn't bring any, where it's like dark chocolate black. That's when you want to start changing that out.
So it's the black, the thing that you were showing us before, and some are lighter color. Why is that?
It's just the choice of the beekeeper. I run black because it's easier to see eggs.
It is, it's a lot easier.
Then,
Yellow is hard to see your egg.
and white, you might as well just say, oh, well. But anyway, so if I talk to you about old wax, there was old wax, okay? Stuff that's within 5 years old, you want it, and that's in the brood chamber. This is a brood frame, you can tell because it's darker, right? So they've used this for brood, and there's a good way on that side. Brood, easy to tell, that's that little dark circle, so that's got cocoon. And so that's what you want to trade out every 5 years is the old brood comb. Stuff in your supers that has not been, they haven't drawn, they haven't laid, she hasn't laid in it. Let's see if I got something. They're just starting, this is just started. She hasn't laid anything in there. So, but when the bee starts laying in there and the bees hatch, it's gonna be that darker. You can tell the sides are light because that's where they had honey stored. Center, that was a brood chamber. This is what, and there is also pollen or bee bread that is stored in there. And over time, that's what builds up the residuals of pesticides, herbicides, fungicides. And over time, that residual builds up and becomes toxic to the bees. They themselves will propolize over the cell. So if you got a frame, and you're looking at a frame and you're looking at the cells that are so, they become toxic or poison, the bees themselves know it, and they will propolize over it. So it'll be like a cap, but it's not a honey cap, it's not a brood cap, it is propolis cap, and it's dark. And when that happens, they're telling you that it's toxic. They're telling you that it's time to get rid of that frame. Okay, honey supers, if they haven't laid in it, you can keep them indefinitely because they're extracted every year. See, if there's no pollen in it, if there's no, and they haven't laid, queen hasn't laid in it, those can be kept indefinitely. Yeah, but the thing about wax moth, the wax moth doesn't even, they won't even go through a honey super that has not been laid. If queen has laid in it, then they will attack that. But they're looking for the protein. That grub is looking for protein. So basically, if you have any bee bread, they'll hit that. If there's bee bread in your super, then they will go to that. But other than that, when that wax moth is running across the comb, she won't lay an egg on a frame that is all empty comb. Unless it's cocoon or bee bread. That's the difference. So that's what I'm talking about, changing out your comb. That's what I'm talking about. And but comb that still looks, you can tell it's starting to get dark, right? Starting to get dark. This is still all right. It's not that you still on the side. It's not too dark. This is probably the second year, maybe the first year. Again, it's a little darker. I didn't grab it. I wasn't gonna go down that road. That's a little bit darker, so you can tell after a while, it becomes dark brown and then into black. If you got comb like that, it's time to change it out. Rotate it. Drawn comb. When is a good time? What's the rule? Anybody know what the rule is when you're to put the second box? Those of you that did your own nooks or your walkaway splits, and now the bees are moving side to side, they're still in a single. What's the rule that we have to, before you put another box on? In 710 or 810, there's different thoughts there, but it's either one of those. When they have filled out 8 of the frames, then you want to start thinking about putting on another box. Now, so we're talking about 2 brood chambers now. Not, we'll get to the nooks and just, or the supers, honey supers in just a minute. This is setting of empty box. This is all this is nothing but empty frames. Okay, this box here. So we want to draw a comb, and we want to do it. A lot of people will say, well, put it and put the lid on and good luck. What happened is you just set something on top of them and they're looking up and that's not home. That we don't belong there. And so the only way they're coming up is that they are absolutely forced to. There is nothing else that they can do. They'll even, a lot of times they'll swarm. They'll take off in the middle of the summer because they still feel they're out of room because this is nothing but a bunch of blanks. It is foreign material to them. There are some bees that'll go up and they'll wander around. They may draw a little bit of comb here or there, but you want to get them to pull them up. So what you're doing is you want to give them the knowledge that this is their home. How do you do that? Well, take 4 frames. If this is full, you get 4 frames of your blanks out of the center. Okay, this is out of the center of the box, not to the sides. The bees always move from the center out. That is the natural construction of their colony, center out. So where this one here, they move from the center out and they're pretty full. I like to take, let's say I have 4 or 5 frames of brood down here, whether capped or open, doesn't matter. I will take 2 of those frames. I will keep them together. I do not separate those. I'll keep them together. And they're from the center of this one or one of the 2 of the 4. I'll place them in the center of this upper box. Okay, still with me? Now down below, I make sure the brood is stayed in the center. So I might have to rearrange some or shuffle some things around. So I make sure those 2 frames of brood down below are still in the center. So they're aligned, top and bottom, center, brood. They do a whole lot better moving up and down like that. If you scatter them out, it's much more difficult for them to work. There are some times if your box is not, if your bee population isn't strong enough, they will even abandon a frame of brood. And so you're pushing yourself backwards if you don't do this right. You're trying to hurry them along and they're on their own schedule. So sometimes if you don't add structure, add room in a proper method, you just push them, but you just lost 2 frames of brood. That's 10,000 bees that are gone. So you want to make sure you align them top and top. Now they're together. So I only have 2 frames here. What do nurse bees need to have to feed the larva? They need bee bread and nectar. That is the two ingredients that they need to produce the royal gel. They do that in the hypopharyngeal gland in their head. They need both of those ingredients. And it's much more difficult for them to go all the way back down to get that and come all the way back up. So I'm going to help them out by giving them, my 2 brood frames and put them back in the middle. I got a couple of frames of honey and pollen mixed on both those, and so I will put those to each side. Okay? So I have 4 frames, 2 brood and 2 pollen honey frames. Brood in the center. Brood in the center. These are 2 brood in the center, honey, pollen on the outside, and that's the configuration that I'm placing in the top box. Right above. And then I'll take my other frames that I took out, these are new frames, and I will put those on the outside, so 2 and 2. So I'll put those 2 empties outside, one, and then outside on the other. Stay with me? Yay, okay. Now, put those back together. We have, it's the same beehive. Now we just stacked it apartment style. And they will move out from there, okay? Try to avoid dropping a blank frame right in the middle of the brood nest. Unless you have an extremely strong hive, and some people, you know, and I know, and I do that. But it is very specific circumstances. In fact, there's times I've even checkerboarded, and let's talk about checkerboarding. There'll be times I'll even checkerboard every frame in the beehive, not just the brood, every single frame. And that is the colony that is at least 70,000. So if they're 70,000 bees strong, and they have a very strong flow. A strong flow that I know that will be at least going for a week. Okay. Honey flow, there is nectar coming in. So the honey flow is dependent on the source of the flower that they are working. Right now, the main source in the valley is alfalfa. That's what's happening right now. Some of you are in a grounder. In other words, there is so much coming in. How to know? You take a frame out that's glistening. Really, you can see that it's full of honey. Turn it sideways and over the top. Okay, you don't want to waste it. Over the top of the frames. Shake it like that. Just shake it like that. You know, all the bees are off, but sideways, like shake it like that. And if it is a heavy flow, then this whole thing will be wet because this honey will just fall out. If it's a slow flow, they've already dehydrated, just have a little bit. But if it's a heavy flow, then you got that whole frame is filled full of fresh nectar, and they filled it up within just a day, then it'll shake out just like that. And that'll tell you that you're in a heavy honey flow. And then you got to be paying attention. If you're in a heavy honey flow, you can pack the brood chamber, because what happens if they don't have enough room? They do not have enough room to place the new honey that's coming in, the new nectar that's coming in. They'll fill in the brood chamber. A bee will hatch, and they won't even wait on the queen. The queen is looking for a hole to lay, and she's usually laying back in the brood chamber, but there is no room for the bees to put the new nectar. They'll fill in the brood nest, and you'll become what's called honeybound. And a honeybound nest is just gone way backwards. They will clean up the nest if you finally give them room, but it takes them a while, especially if you're drawing new comb. So you got to stay ahead of it this time of year. Pay attention to what's going on. If you got a lot of nectar flowing in, just talking to a couple of you've heard what's going on there. Trace has got there in Delta. He's got a bunch of nectar coming in now, real strong. 2 weeks ago, I was about ready to move a yard because they're right next to a big alfalfa field at one of the commercial guys, but there's a bunch of little guys. That's at 22 and M. So right in there. So you didn't know about that one, did you? So
Stealing my nectar.
22 AM and,
Well, I'm only a mile away, so he's stealing my stuff.
22 in case, so there's that one.
I know, I did.
But anyway, and a big yard, you know, it's, well, there's 40. And the reason why we're there is, you know, this big bunch of individual hay fields, and the guy driving by, and I was talking to him, and he's out of town, he's in Arizona somewhere, it's down by Phoenix. This is just a separate home, and he has a shooting range next to this big alfalfa. This is 100 acres, it's huge, long, beautiful field. And so I'm talking to him, and I said, man, I got, you know, I'll give you some, I give honey for rent, and, you know, I give it whatever you want in a bucket or jars, and, you know, great gifts, and blah, blah, blah. I said, yeah, I like honey. I said, well, I showed him a couple places I could put him. Nah, it's too close to my shooting range. So that's okay, you know, so he said, I'll think about it. So I went and talked to the neighbor, the next door neighbor. And they said, yeah, we want, yeah, so, you know, so I called him back, and he said, well, yeah, that'd be okay, way back down here. I said, well, that's okay, because, you know, I'm right next to your shooting range, just over the fence. But you'll never, and he didn't, and they've been in there for a week, and he didn't even know it. I said, you'll never know, and I was trying to explain it, you'll never know that they're there, so they won't bother you. Anyway, so they sprayed for weevils late. And it devastated that yard. In fact, I knocked probably half of them down to a single box. This is a production yard. So these are full strength beehives. When I put them in there, these are ready to make honey. So they're ready to go at the beginning of the year. And so it sprayed for weevils, knocked the soup out of them, killed a bunch of queens, took them down to singles, half of them. And so I'm gonna move the yard. So 2 days ago, went by to see, well, what's left, and I'm gonna move the yard. I was really disappointed. And everything turned around, just on a dime. And I had to put a box on everything I had to, because they were getting plugged out. It just turned around, flipped on a dime. And so, and the reason why is that field, that big field, now is in full bloom. There's 100 acres of nothing but full bloom alfalfa. And I don't know what's going on, because it's normally cut. So I don't know if that, the landowner, or when, whatever happened to him or something, the place is up for sale, and who he hires to do the hay is not doing it. I don't know, but I'm not complaining. Okay, so I'm gonna say it turns around really quick. I mean, really quick this time of year. So you could be struggling, and then all of a sudden they find a source, and boom, they're going. This one here, if I would have waited, my plan was I'm gonna move them probably into this week or first of next week. If I would have waited, they would all been ruined. They'd all, in other words, they'd all been honey bound. They would have been packed out, and that'll ruin a hive, because there's no place for the queen to lay. And they're already behind a cycle. So that's why you gotta be paying attention on where your bees are at. So, to put on, we talked about putting on that box, to put on the second brood chamber. Now let's talk about putting on a honey super. So this, in your mind now, I run all deeps for all my supers. I don't have any shallows. So all my equipment is all deep. So all my honey supers, 120 pounds of weight. I just, my extraction process, as well as it's easy for me to rotate comb, because I can take comb out of my honey super, put it down in my brood chamber. So I'm always rotating comb. So now it's easier for me to rotate that comb, especially when I do my fall splits. I have all this drawn comb, and getting geared up to go to pollinate the almonds in California. So with that, they're heavy, so you better know somebody. I mean, not old people, you gotta know some young people. And preferably more brawn than brains, okay? And that's because, you know, we're stacking them. I've already have a yard that's the third super, and we're about ready to put on the fourth super of honey. So you're talking about 6 boxes high, and by the end of the season, we'll probably have 8 altogether. We'll have pulled them off, but that one beehive will produce, 800 pounds.
Wow.
So that's production. That's a production colony in the right conditions, doing everything that I'm telling you to do. If you do it. So now I got a honey super, and I got nothing but empty comb. This is where we come in. This is the first super. So you can't do this if you don't have drawn comb. So if all you have is just that shallow, which most of you do, you're just gonna place that blank on top of those double deeps. And this is this honey super, and it's a shallow, so it's gonna be very difficult. Again, they gotta be forced to go up there because it is nothing but empty. One way that you can do it is make sure that you're using double waxed frames. There's a couple in here that's a little better than others. So I'm gonna send that around. Look at the yellow. You can tell it's real beeswax because it's yellow. That's a heavy wax frame. So you can buy them. Now, some of you are, you're bargain shopping and you're wanting the cheapest equipment. And I get that because, this has been an expensive hobby as it was, and all your dreams of becoming a commercial beekeeper are out the window now, and you're thinking, well, maybe sideliner now. And or I'm just happy if I get a jar of honey at the end, but it's well worth your money buying frames that are heavy waxed or double waxed, depends on where you're getting them. I'm gonna give you 3 companies that sell the best foundation. Now, frames, you can get them Man Lake, Dadant, Better Bee. Frames are all interchangeable. Best frames out there right now are Man Lake, my opinion. Dadant kind of went downhill. But the foundation, is the wax that you can buy, and you'll buy these sheets of wax. Plastic, and they got wax coating. Pure Coat. Those are taking notes, Pure Coat. These are Pure Coat.
PIR. PIR.
Are they about the Man Lakes?
Better than Man Lakes, a lot better than Man Lakes. Pure Coat has the heaviest plastic. Pure Coat, PIERCO. Pure Coat. Now, Pure Coat, again, the heaviest gauge plastic to begin with, so they don't warp as easy. You ever lay one of these empty frames out in the sun, and then you lay it on sideways, and you come back and it looks like that, It doesn't, it'll never go back flat, no matter what you do. There's nothing you can, there's some people that, well, I heat it up and I put it under some bricks. And it kind of flattened out a little bit better, but no matter what you do, so Pure Coat will take a lot more abuse when it comes to heating and cooling. And again, so you want these Pure Coat heavy wax. The other one that's close, Acorn Bee Supply. In fact, they used to work with each other, the two companies, and they are less than 30 miles apart on Chico, California, North LA. So that's where they both are. Pierce makes some good, also some good bee equipment. That's another one. And now if you buy your frames from the big bee supplies, Better Bee, I'm not, but mostly Man Lake, Dadant, their foundation's really flimsy. They are, and I'm not sure where they're sourcing it from. And the last bunch I got from Man Lake, I was not impressed at all. In fact, that's probably the last time I buy it from them. These guys are Bennett apiaries, where we buy these. But their foundation is Pure Coat, comes already put together. So that's That'll help a lot. What the bees do, they're able to draw this comb out with the wax that's on the frame. That's what helps. If they do not have this wax on the frame, they got to produce all of it themselves with their wax glands, the three first flaps on their abdomen, on the thorax, and the age of bees that do that are the week-old nurse bees. And they only have about a 7-day period of their life where their wax glands are in full capacity. As they get older, they still can turn those wax glands on, but a worker bee that is 3 weeks old only has about 20% ability left. That's the same it is for their hypopharyngeal gland. It's only about 20%. They can still produce royal gel, but it's been shut off, and they have been, their body now is transformed into more of a collection for their crop expands in their body to carry the nectar, and then their legs for the pollen. Yeah.
So is the swarm mostly younger nurse bees then?
The swarm will be all bees. They'll be all bees.
Because they're ready to pump out wax.
The early nurse bees cannot fly yet till they're about a week and a half old. So those are usually what's left behind. So they don't have the ability to fly. So it is the older bees, but yeah, a swarm that kicks that wax production in high gear. There's something about a swarm that you can, if you capture a swarm, they are a wax making machine, because that's in their mind. Hey, we got to build a whole new community. So it's a different mentality when they swarm than it is something that's already in the hive. Does that make sense? Okay, yeah.
Have you tried the Premier?
Premier is good too. Premier is good. Premier, the one thing about Premier is they tout there's more cells to the frame. Okay, they add another 200 cells altogether. And they do that by making the cells smaller, which in turn makes your bee smaller. Well, it'll make your bee smaller, and a smaller bee carries less honey. Those of you that run Saskatraz, you know these are big gator bees. These are huge bees in comparison. These Saskies their origins are in Canada, and those Canadian bees are monsters in comparison. So that's the only thing about Premier. And Premier's, I know Cayman Reynolds touts them, but Cayman, they give them a bunch of stuff. So, they give them a whole bunch of merch to do that. And anyway, I've used their product too. And I've noticed that the bees coming out of those cells are smaller cells, smaller bee.
What's happening in the bee's body actually makes that wax? What?
It's nectar, and then it's a wax gland. The gland,
Nectar from the wax
they require nectar to produce that wax in their glands, and it's three glands that come out under their flaps, right below the thorax on the bottom. And it looks like a little flake. Flake.
Inside the box.
Wax gland. Wax
They
gland.
have a gland that makes it.
Yeah, they have to have nectar. Yeah, so when we are building mating nooks, queen mating nooks, they're little ones. We feed them. Syrup, because they have to draw out comb. And we want them to, and we lock them down, and so we want them to start drawing out comb before we drop a cell in there. And so, but they have to have some kind of nectar source to be able to draw out wax. If they don't have that, they won't do it. So that's what I'm saying. A honey flow, a good honey flow, they'll draw out wax. Okay. If there is nothing coming in, you got to feed them for them to draw anything. You have to run a feeder for them to draw any wax. even though you've heavy waxed, they still require wax to do that. They still require, and it's still the young nurse bees that do that, well, about a week old. The 6,
6 to 13 days.
right in there. Yeah.
That's the wrong question. It wasn't,
Premium? I have never heard of them. No, not Premium, but Premier, Premier was talking about, that's an Eastern company, I think it's out in, I think, Tennessee or somewhere in there. Yeah, yeah.
So as far as feeding them this time of year with the.
Oh, no, there's the easiest way to tell if your bees need fed. You can put something out there. If they're not touching it, they have nectar coming in. They'll take nectar over sugar water all day long. So they won't even touch that. So that's, if they, so, and this time of year, unless you're, the guy that helped me start, Matt George, he helped me start, Ice to Heroes. And he was way out there in the Badlands at the end of like 8 Road or something like that. And so he had an early honey flow, and then the rest of the year he's feeding them because they're nothing. I mean, he's way out there. You know, this veteran that he wanted to be away from people for a reason, and I said that's great, but not so good for your bees. I'm out there helping him. I said I don't see nothing for miles. You know.
Wow.
So it depends on where you're at, is when I brought that up. And so, and unless you're in a place like that, you usually have some kind of forage somewheres, and you won't have to feed them. But that's the best way to, all year long, you know. But here's the thing about sugar water is it will go bad over time. It will go bad. And then if it sours, then you're not doing them any favors. They're gonna have gut issues.
It'll turn green.
Yeah, and if they got that, then that is a gut issue, and that will send your bees backwards too. Gut health is very important, and let's just throw a side note in right here about gut health. If one of your hives is not doing well, and we talked about that, they're struggling for whatever reason, one is booming and everything's happening, it's doing great, just the other one's just not doing nothing. They're just, you see a queen, there's eggs, but they're not gaining anything. They're just kind of staying static. Well, there's 2 reasons for that. One is mite load. You might have a high mite load, and so you need to, high mite load equals virus load. If there's a heavy virus load, then they got gut issues, and they just won't go forward. They'll be in that single box all year, and then comes fall, they die. So what happens now is that you need to increase gut health, and you can do that a couple of different ways. If it's not a mite load, it could be pesticides, herbicides, fungicides. It could be comb issues. You could have some comb in there that is not it's old dark comb, and so that is sending them backwards, because every time they're dealing with that chunk of comb, and that pesticide is just spreading right through, and so they're dealing with gut issues. You got to get rid of the cause and deal with the gut issue. If you don't get rid of the cause, you can throw a lot of money at gut issues and they'll get better, but then they'll just go right back to struggling because whatever's the cause. So that's a few of those issues that are going on. So what you do, there's 2 great products on the market, Super DFM. How many of you are using Super DFM? Anybody? Okay, number of you. Good. Are you seeing a difference? Especially if there's an issue that they're kind of struggling, you hit them with that, and boom. That is probiotics. That's a gut health. The other one is Mellifera Boost. I'm using Mellifera Boost right now. This time of year, I use Super DFM early, then late. Mellifera Boost seems to work a little bit better during the middle of the year when it's heavy load. Yeah.
So that's my question. So we did the
Super DFM.
So we did that 3 weeks ago.
Mhm.
And so now when can I do another kind of boost for them?
Okay, I think the manufacturer's directions are at least 2 weeks apart. 2 weeks apart.
Okay.
It is a powder source that has healthy enzymes. There's a number of things. It's primarily for gut health, to help the bees in deal with virus, pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, everything that they deal with. And it comes, you can buy it in just a powder form. You take that with a tablespoon, set it on one of the corners, atop the frames, and it's got powdered sugar in it, so they devour it. Spreads through the colony because they feed each other, and it turns it around. I don't believe you can use super DFM with supers. So that's one of the things you cannot use with supers. So a mellifera boost you can. You can't put it on the super, but you can put it on the brood chambers. You can use mellifera boost with supers. So that's the reason why we're using it. Yep.
Going back to the dark browns, wax and frames, you recommend scraping and reusing those, or?
I pop out that foundation altogether. I just pop it out, and then I will scrape the insides. Take hive tool and scrape out, if you got one of the little hooks on the hive, and scrape out. And make sure that all the old wax is gone, if you want to reuse the frame. And then pop in a new foundation. Scraping that old, there's still, if it's heavy enough, the pesticides, herbicides, it has penetrated that plastic. And then scraping it all, especially the old comb that is the cocoon, the brood chambers. Yeah, then cleaning that up and then re-waxing it's a lot of work. And so it's just easier to pop it out. And like I said, if you can buy 100 frames, and it's not gonna break the bank, and you just always have some extra frames on hand. Yeah. So
If you buy 100 now, at least mediums are about $3.25 a piece.
$3.
Yeah, from Manlick, some right in that area, bought a bunch of them. When you scrape this nasty wax off, if you want to scrape it, it's great for your garden. Really, really good for your garden.
Good fire starter.
Yes, good fire starter. The other thing, going back just a little bit, you have two hive bodies and you put a super on, like you're saying, but you can't change the comb up. It's nothing but bare foundation because it's all you have. Take a garden sprayer, 1-to-1 sugar water, and lightly mist every side of all 10 of these frames on your medium, your super, and set it up on top of them. They'll smell that sugar and they'll all come up and they'll start cleaning all around, and then they'll say, start fixing a little wax here or there, and then they'll decide it's their home. It'll help them to come up.
Yeah, that'll draw them up a lot easier. So when you do get a box of drawn, if these are two supers, one is drawn comb, one is not. We do what we call checkerboard. That is, we take one drawn comb out and one blank, and we place it back and forth. Does that make sense? So when you're done, you got a checkerboard. Boom, boom. Drawn, blank, drawn, blank, drawn, blank. And the reason why that is the best case option, because what we call B space. B space is that 1/4 inch to 3/8. Sweet spot is 5/16. 5/16, right in that area, they will not draw comb. With that space, which is called B space, the one that really understood that, and the reason why we call these boxes, what do we call these boxes? Anybody know? Langstroth, because it was that guy, Langstroth, that figured out B space and set this configuration up. So you don't get what we call wonky comb. How many got wonky comb? Wonky comb is when they decide, instead of drawing it out beautifully this way, they decide to draw it this way in the middle, and you break it open and it just, you got all kinds of mixed mash everywhere. And
a hive right now it's driving crazy because I have to keep going and scraping the ground off. Yep, it's like, why can't they figure it out?
genetics, they will always do that. Yes, as part of the genetics. They will always do that. You'll find that they will draw a cone in the lid before they draw out a frame.
That's just how they are. So the high. It's really always on a list. We don't know why. It's at one time that I love, but we've never been able to make it stop it. Should we just not try to? I mean,
No, now propolis is I know it's a pain. I know it's, because now you got it all over everything. But believe it or not, propolis is something that we are genetically breeding back in to our hives. And the reason why is because it is their natural defense. It is their way of combating viruses. It's their antibiotic. And the more propolis in the hive, the better they are.
And getting like.
It's a pain in the butt.
Stuck to the inner lid.
They like to draw it up here on top of this and all over the places that you need to keep clean because it has to do with this bee space. If they're putting a bunch of propolis right here, well, then you got a bunch of propolis here and pretty soon it's not sitting together, but it's sitting 1/4 of an inch apart. Well, now you've messed up the bee space again.
We
So-
scraped that off.
Yeah, so what you need to scrape is the propolis is off of right here,
Shoulders.
off of under here. And that's really important. And then on the rim of the box where this lays. So that this is laying in the right position, because if it's built up and it's up like here, now you've messed up the bee space underneath. And from this frame up to the next one, they start building even more.
Yeah, so that's the cross comb underneath, the
Right.
bridge comb from box to box, and you'll find that. So you always try to scrape the tops of your frames. I mean, they will constantly do that because it's a bridge for them. They don't have to go all the way out and up. They can just go straight up. And so on that bottom box during the summer, I won't scrape that bottom box. I'll just let them build that cross comb or bridge comb, what it's called. So it helps them move back up. But know this, when you are trying to get these boxes apart, there's a bunch of cross comb. What happens is when you pick this up, a lot of these frames stay with it.
Yeah.
And then you gotta go all the way down and try to pop them loose before you come up. And so that is a problem there too, but if you're not in that bottom box, because your mite treatment's good and it's intact and in order, then you don't have to dig into them. Because you're just dealing with honey supers, then that's okay there too. But yeah, it's sleeping to maintain, scraping. Now the propolis is what they're doing for their own defense, their health. So and there's a couple other Premier is another one that one of their thing is they are getting a wire wheel and they are wire wheeling the inside of all of their deep boxes. And they do that because then the bees will come and propolize where that wire wheel was, smooth it out. And to increase the health, and it remains to see if it's really making a huge difference. What I will think it do is if it's propolized too much, that it's gonna hit the sidebar, and then you're gonna have an issue coming in and out.
Right. Now, one of the other things that I'll do to keep you there, saying that this is on top of here, you're gonna lift this up and it's stuck to the ones on the bottom. I put my hive tool in, I crack it up, and then I pull it like this. If it pulls real easy, nothing is stuck. If they propolis these frames to those frames, you crack it up, you go to pull it and it won't pull. And then you can crack it up just enough and you can pop the frames off. I've known people that do this and there's 2 frames stuck on the bottom and then they get to pull one and then 2 frames drop. And then they're mad. Who knows if the queen was on there?
Throw up your leg.
Yeah. Well, I've never been good enough to lift it straight up that far, but I've known that have.
Since I started doing your 8th
Yeah.
twist, I've never picked up.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Anyway, back to the propolis. You want to leave the propolis that's there unless it's getting in the way of something in the hive. If it's messing up the bee space, like we were talking, like going up and down. Or on this outside rim here where you have a lot of propolis here and a lot of propolis on this one, and you set them down,
They
and
don't.
now they don't meet and there's air gaps, well, then they want to propolize that in. So unless it's in the way, leave it alone. But the places that it's in the way, where we just talked about, you need to scrape those.
Or your equipment's not the best, and they're gonna try to fill in those holes, so. Anyway,
Terry, do you throw your propolis in the garden too?
The propolis, no, what I was talking about was
No, you said
slum
comb,
gum.
the combs.
Right,
I was asking if you.
I don't have a garden, but yes, I know a lot. It's called slum gum. And all of those old cocoons and that stuff, that's really fertile. It's really good for gardens. You can spread them out, yeah. If I had a garden, I would, but I don't have a garden, so.
Gardens.
honey production tips, and that is, once you get your supers where they're in your checkerboarding them, and you can see if I can apply this to where some of you are at. You have that ability to the second and third year, let's start there, when you do have majority of your supers that are drawn out, and most of you probably have some supers that are drawn comb. And so that is also manipulation, and what they want to do, what a bee wants to do is they want to start in the middle, in the center usually, or pick one of those frames. It's usually in the center, maybe off to the side, but very seldom on the outside. And they begin to fill in these center frames with the honey, okay? When they're starting to do that, and that's when, let's say, I'll get these two, they're filled in. Usually these are already, and they're starting to be capped. I don't wait for them to cap it. I will gut super, or I will checkerboard that one. I will, and a bee will always want to do stuff in order and in progress. I am interrupting that progress. They don't like that, so they want to go back to doing what they do best, and that is keep it in order. So I'm forcing them again to come to the inside and begin to fill up that blank one. It's drawn. I'll do that even with blanks. I'll set a blank frame right between two frames that are being filled out, and they'll fill that blank one really quick. That's the same way it is with, especially in the brood chamber. A really strong hive, they'll drop everything else in the whole entire hive to draw out that one comb that's sitting right in the middle of the brood chamber. Now, if you do that, make sure you got heavy wax, because you can mess them up. And you got a good frame, set that down in the middle of the brood chamber, boom, they're gonna draw that out. I will also, to help draw out, now this is because I can do this because all of my stuff's deep. I'll take a couple of these outside frames of the brood chamber that are gonna be honey, and I'll bring them up to my supers, because that's drawn comb. I mean, it's honey, it's a drawn, and I'll take a blank, come down here. I will never put a blank on the outside in the brood chamber. I'll never put a blank. That's the last one. In fact, at the end of the summer, when they put up 10 boxes of honey, this will still be blank if it's on the outside in the brood chamber. I always come one in. I'll take a honey frame, and I'll bring it, and then I'll set this one frame in space number 2 or 9. Okay. I never leave it on the outside, because they especially the bottom box, the very bottom box, it'll still be blank at the end of the year.
thought that was so weird too. It's so late. It was like,
So,
I have a whole box of
So I'll take that old frame. It's capped honey from the super or from the brood box, and I bring it up to my super. Again, I can do that because I'm running all deeps for my supers. I do that because I can rotate comb, boom, boom, and it just, but you gotta have college age kids helping you pull honey. I tell them, I'll give you $2 a box and they dollar signs, and at the end of the day, that's not enough.
Harvest your honey just one time a year?
No, I'm harvesting probably next week.
I also do that with my honey supers. After they've come up with this honey super and they've got 4 or 5 frames filled out, I'll move those filled frames to the outside to take some of the empty ones to put them in the middle. So that, because they'll do the same thing with this, they'll fill 6 or 7 frames of this super and then start putting honey up in the second super. But if you flip it around, then you get a good full whole box of honey.
That's just manipulation because they want to take care of the center. That's just their mentality. They'll wait till the outside to the very end. So what you're doing is you're helping them along by moving those frames out and dropping blanks or unfilled frames in the center. So basically, it's manipulation of the hive. Takes a little bit more work, a lot more work than just throwing an empty box on. Just throwing an empty box on and going. Now, the next thing is this. If these are 2 supers and I'm wanting to put a third one on, I just don't stack them up. If this one's filled, my next empty is gonna be in this slot or the right above the deeps. It's called gut super. Here's double deep. Say if these are double deeps, the brood chamber, here's my supers. I got 2 supers up here. The third one is not gonna go on top. The third one's gonna go right here. Third box. I take these off because the bees are gonna have to travel that distance to work. How do the nurse bees receive nectar? Anybody know? They're not flying. It's passed off to them. Usually at the door or right in the brood chamber somewheres. In these 2 first boxes that they're passing off. The workers, the field force is passing off the nectar out of their crop. They feed it right into the bee and then she goes up. And if you're having to go travel again, you're talking 2 feet to the next super. That's a huge distance that they have to go. You're helping them by putting it closer to where they are receiving that nectar, not so far to go, saving time. And that'll increase your honey production as well. Usually half a box.
Did you say to do that after when you're putting on the third super?
No, just anytime, the second one or whenever. I always got super everything. I never just keep throwing the boxes. And it's a lot of work. You're moving 120 pounds, boom, boom, boom to get it. And I say, why do I do that? It's so much easier just throwing an empty box on top. It is. And when you're dealing with 1,000 colonies, it's a little bit of work. However, it's worth it at the end. They just have to put up with complaining. And then remind them, it pays the same, man, it pays the same. So, okay. But why can't we do that? I just said, and I tell them, well, at the end of the day, your bonus, which is if we do more production, then your bonus is, okay. All right, dollar signs, okay. And that is, it'll increase the honey production when the bees don't have to travel as far. It's from, I'm receiving the honey here, I only have to go here. I don't have to go all the way up here, running back and forth. That makes sense? Okay, so that's one of the honey tricks. Also, somebody asked me if I extract just once a year, we probably have 3 or 4, depends on flow in the fall of extractions. So we're probably doing the next one is in 2 weeks or 1 week, depends. Then you pull all the honey so what do you want to do with that extracted super? You just extracted it, put it right back on the hive.
Jason, so you have 1,000 hives. Are you doing all of your hives?
Everyone that's pulling honey from, so, our production hives. We have nut yards and mating yards and, you know, all that, but the production, yeah.
Where?
Depends on the flow when they're plugged. It's just, yeah, it all depends, just it going through. Like, we're drawing a lot of comb this year, we're drawing 10,000 frames, so it's like, takes a lot more to draw frames. Blanks, so I've been drawing out comb, but like I said, there's a couple of them that they're. And this is the great thing about it is. There's one yard, they're in Drownder, and they're production colonies. And they'll probably have a box drawn out and filled, because I got super and I checkerboard, they'll have all those filled out, drawn out and filled and capped. Probably in a week.
Wow.
If that flow continues, it'll be easy. So that means I've got to. Tyler, can you help me?
Well, as far as how often that you extract, can be from when you have one frame done or you have 5 boxes. It just depends. You know, maybe you don't have the time that week or whatever, you can gut super. That other super that's up here full of honey, it's gonna be fine all the way till September. You just wanna keep that super and have 5 up there.
Yeah.
And then you only have to extract once. However, now you gotta buy 5 boxes. Whereas, you know, if you got 2 boxes and you take them off and extract them and put them back on, you only had to buy 2 boxes. So there's a benefit to both. It depends on what way you.
Your
want to do it.
equipment and how much time you have and. You're saving. Your time is valuable, so. In your setup, if it takes you, if you're. Scraping the frames, then that's one thing. If you got a nice uncapper and you got a couple of grandkids with a hand crank, you know, there. You know, it depends on equipment, how you do that, and then how often you want to do that. But the thing is, if they run out of room. And that's the thing, I run out of equipment and they're running out, I have to extract to get that box back on there, or they're gonna be honeybound in their brood chain. That's the last thing.
When I lived in a different house, I didn't have room. I had to set up all my extractors and cappers and all that stuff. So I didn't extract as often because it's a pain. I had to put plastic on the walls and do all this stuff, and it was a all week thing. So I waited until I got 2 or 3 supers on every one of them. Now in my basement, I have an extraction room where it's all set up. You know, so I can just take 2 or 3 boxes home and extract them. It's not a big deal. There's no setup, there's no tear down. So that's just another thing that depends on how often you want to extract.
And so that's a question that's probably whatever you can do, whatever you're set up to do, yeah.
Do all spinners need to be little or big in them, the spinners, or you had to have a special spinner for the big frames?
There is, you know, my first years ago, I had 9 frame. Either was 9 deeps or twice that many shallows. So every extractor is different. So it just depends on what some extractors will do. Most of them will do both. Most extractors will do both, like 3 or 6.
If you get a 6 frame or smaller, it won't do largest. If you get a 9 frame extractor, it'll do deep frames, not tangentially, not radially, but it'll do them tangential, which is a big pain because you got to spin half and then pick them up and turn them around. If you get a 20 frame or bigger, it'll take frames just, you know, deep frames, just like it takes medium frames. But you have to get a certain radius, you know, of the spinner to be able to get these in there.
So I would suggest this, whatever size you're thinking that you're needing, buy the one that's twice that big.
I was gonna ask, would you mind in the next couple months doing a little bit more on extractors? We've bought 3, don't like any of them. I just feel like we don't really know enough about what we're looking for in.
Sure, we can do that. The club does have extractor that we two.
Yeah, I gotta get a new lid for one of them, but we do have two, and they are manual, so that's where you need the kids. I will have to look and see if they'll do deals.
Are you talking about a plastic bin?
Yeah, one of them really looks like a trash can with a spinner inside of it, and it's got, the other one has got a plexiglass and it broke. I'm trying to see if I can find a replacement. The hinge broke, and I can find the plexiglass, but the hinge, the only place I can find it is Italy. It's cheap, it's only like $3, but then I gotta pay for shipping to get it from Italy. So,
So who has a motorized extractor? Your life changed.
If you buy a motor for your handbreaker,
I don't know.
Some models, yeah.
Yeah, so
Some models, yes. ASF, you can buy them. Most of the other ones just come motorized, that's it. Any of the plastic ones, they don't make a motor for. And usually you won't find a motor for any of them until you get to a 9 frame. If it's smaller than a 9 frame.
you can do a 4, because my little one that I'm just gonna replace it's a 4 frame. It's 4 frame tangential, and it has a motor on it.
Yeah, we could do an extractor. We can bring some frame, some different. So for uncapping, you're using hot knife, most of you,
who you use, Jason?
Cowan uncapper.
Hot knife. Hot knife. That's what I use.
Cowan uncapper has oscillating blade.
Very expensive.
I use the.
20 grand.
Yeah, 20 grand is supposed to hot knife's 120.
So Pierce is the best company to buy a hot knife. Pierce has adjustable temperature. So and it's not, there's some that are adjustable the temperature on the handle, but Pierce has a little box and they're almost bulletproof. $120, but that is the best $120 you'll buy Pierce. Pierce.
When we do the thing on the extractors, we'll bring in.
Okay, we're gonna do honey or queen marking.
There were some questions last meeting about different things that you use to catch queens and mark them. And so I brought quite a few of them. This was the first way I did it. Grab the queen off the frame with this. And you got to fiddle and get all the workers out. And then this is a marking tube. Then you have to get her out of here and into this without dropping her, having her fly off, whatever. And get this on here. And then the grid, you can push her up in there and then mark her. And then after you mark her, make sure you let this come back a little bit. Put it in the shade. 3 or 4 minutes, let that dry before you then take this, pull it out, and set it on top like that. Don't dump her out. Yeah, just lay it on there. And let her come out. If she's right up here on this top part, the top part comes off. You can even take that off for her. Let her go down in there at her own leisure. Don't try to force her down in and get her all stressed. This is another one. It's just smaller. No, because it's got a foam. And when I was gonna say when we're done, there's. And then I found this one. This is kind of a neat, it's a one-hander. And if she's on this frame here, just get her there in the middle. And you put this over her, and then your thumb slides this down. It's a gate, and it traps her in there. Then you can turn it over. This actually has a little catch on it so that when you don't turn it upside down, it doesn't drop down and hit her. It's got a lock so that it stays up while you're catching. But then once you get the gate slid closed, then you can unlock it and push this up, and you see that's the same way. Then you can take a pen and you can mark her. Same thing, put her in the shade 2 to 3 minutes, and then you can put her back in the hot.
A little bit of speaking experience. Before you go to slide that thing back open, make sure you let your plunger down so you don't just roll.
Yeah.
Because I did that.
Oh, Yeah,
And it's got that thing that comes across there, you gotta make sure you let that one plunger down before you open it back up.
most of the time. I put it like that and she doesn't want to come out. And so then I have to push this forward, get her to come out. The one downfall of these is that if she's crawling across and there's some open nectar, well, then you get some nectar or some honey on this, and then it gets like this. See how hard it is? And then you have to take it apart, put it and wash it in.
Honey or-
Exactly.
Yeah,
This is a new one, or one that I just washed, and it works just fine.
you gotta be careful not to catch a leg or an antenna when you're closing that gate. So it's kind of hard because watching her,
Once you get it like this, you're not in a rush. You can take the frame and set it down on top and make sure you can see her and. Because when you slide this through, if you get some part of her abdomen or something caught in there, you can damage her. So you can slide it like half or 3/4 of the way and then make sure she's up on top of this grate and then close it the rest of the way. And then usually you'll have a few workers in there. So I take my hive tool and I just push up on here, and as the workers come out, I flick them back in the hive so that only the queen is in here when I mark her, set her in the shade. They make this, which is the same as this, only it doesn't have the slide lock. So I found that out when I get this one. Oh, this one's cheaper. And I turn it upside down and this falls down and hits her on the comb. And then that doesn't work too well. Whereas this one has this lock so that it won't come down while you have it upside down this way until you get it caught. So that's why I like the blue ones. I don't really care for the yellow ones. Yeah, somebody brought a metal one of these, same exact thing, it's just metal. And then,
We know the.
ones of these. It's got the good one.
I started using these exclusively. There are it's got a mesh top. And basically, this just sits down on the comb and you don't have to pick her up at all. This presses into the comb where she's at. Press it down to where it just barely is mobile, and that grate is just big enough where you can mark her thorax. I'll send that around. This is Man Lake product.
And this one right here, I got from some off company, Rocky Mountain Bee or whatever, and the grid is so small. I got it and I tried it and I got her pin down there and I took my pin out and the pin head won't fit through the grid. So that's about $4.99 worth of garbage right there. Exactly. These are some cute little things some people like to use for introducing a queen. These fit in here. Like that. So it just hangs over your frame.
Or you can just.
Yeah, you can squish it in the wax. Another thing that I use if I'm putting a queen in a cage, called the queen pipe. And you can use either end of it. It doesn't look like a pipe. But what you do is she's on the frame like this. You just take this opening and put over her. And then when she runs up the tube, you fold it off and you put your thumb on it. Now, you can open up one of these holes and you can just put this in there and tilt it up, and she likes to crawl up in there. The one I had to do this to today was not going up in this side, period. So what you do is you take one of these and you pull one of the staples out and you fold this up, and if you'll notice that fits perfectly down in the, and so then when she crawls down in there, then you pull the screen back closed and hold it closed and restaple it. Because I don't know why, but that queen was not coming out that little end. She did not want to go out that little end. Oh, she would just bound. I mean, I'd get her 3/4 of the way up and then she'd be running backwards with her legs trying to get on. Like, whatever. But this is a handy little thing if you're putting queens in a cage. These are all the different colors of pins. I always buy 2 because I have 30 hives. They are acrylic paint markers. Your best bet is to buy it at Man Lake, Daydent, whatever your place you like, Kelly Bee, whatever. I buy 2 of every color because 2 years in a row, I bought one, I marked about 4 queens and then it stopped. And now I'm in the middle of May and I'm trying to mark queens and I got a I gotta order one from Man Lake, and because it's not $150, I gotta pay shipping, and I gotta take 2 weeks to get here. So, you know, they're $7 a piece, so I always just buy two.
So $9.
They're $9 this year. They went up like everything else, probably the tariffs.
Jason's working all the time. to
Yeah.
send it.
And I got two.
So this year's blue, how you know what year it is there's a little acronym that we use. And it's, will you raise good bees? So that will is white, U yellow, raise is red, G
Good.
good, green, and then bees blue. So blue is year 5 and 0. And white is 1 or 6. So that's how you know. So this is 5-year, so blue. That's the acronym, and that's across the industry. So,
So.
well, it all depends on the beekeeper. Some like to mark them. And if I purchase queens, it costs me $2 more to mark them. For them to come mark. The bees that I raise, the queens that I'm gonna raise, that I go ahead and mark them when we capture them, after we know they're mated.
Then the one that I got, you could raise.
No, all the nooks, no, nobody in the continental United States has queens until May, period. If they tell you they did, they're not mated well, because their earliest mating takes place in California, and that starts in April. And it takes a month from egg to mated queen. So all the nooks that are built are from queens out of Hawaii. And mine are oliveras, they're Saskies. So olivera is honeybees, which is California based, which is the only authorized seller of sassafras in the United States, is oliveras. They have a queen rearing, half of their queen rearing is in Hawaii, on Big Island. So that's Big Island queens, that's oliveras. So that's the queens, but that's where they're from.
You did. Now, I always recommend that you buy these. For some reason, during the green year, I bought them right over at Michael's. I think I was trying something new, and it really didn't make a difference. These came from Michael's right across the street, but I would much prefer to get them from the bee house, just because I know there's a smell to them when you mark them, and it can cause a problem with the queen smelling different. So I like
Don't
to
use testers, oil base.
Yeah, with none of that stuff. The other thing is, the other thing about marking queens, all of my queens are marked. I always mark my queens. And the reason why is you're going along about July or August and everything seems to be going great. You're going through your hives and you got an unmarked queen. What does that mean? You got a swarm or they requeen for some reason. That's right. And then it lets you know that you got a new queen. So most of the time it's because they swarmed, or sometimes it's because she died, but most of the time it's in June and they swarm. So, but anyway, that's why I always mark them. So if I get in and there's an unmarked queen, I know something happened and then I can investigate further. This right here, my wife made me buy after I lost the third queen that flew away that I was trying to raise. And with everything on, however you catch the bee with this or whatever, and you put it in here, and then you put the marking tube in there, and then you put your hands in here, and you can work the whole thing in here, and she can't fly away. If she flies to the outside of here, you can just take this and stick on there and shake her down in there. And it kept me from losing more queens. My wife made me buy it.
It has worked for you.
Yeah, it did work, especially when you first start handling queens, you're very skittish about it. You're very nervous and you try to be too gentle and they get away and they fly away. Now I don't ever use it because I handle them and it's not a big deal, but that's kind of a neat little toy, but it doesn't get used anymore.
Especially the early queens, the versions that just recently been mated. they fly a lot easier than the older queens. So if you have a new queen, she can fly. She can fly. So even though she's laying, she started to lay, she can still fly. So not very good, but they usually fly just far enough where you lose them.
I had one just on Monday that I had 2 or 3 eggs here and 2 or 3 eggs there, and I found her and I got her up in this. And I pushed her up to pin her to market. She came right through those bars. And she was like she was gonna fly. And I put my hand over and I got her over the hive and got her back in the hive, but she was gonna, because she was smaller, she could still fly. Her abdomen wasn't, really distended yet because she had only laid 3 or 4 or 5 eggs. Anyway, so these are not foolproof.
Questions?
And all this stuff y'all can look at after meeting. You can come up and look at it and touch it.
Last time you said something about, I can't remember how you said it, or remember, when, so you have a hive that's got, they're making a queen. You actually got the queen ready to hatch, you move it to another hive, but you said they will accept one, but they won't accept the other. As far as if it's.
Now there's exceptions to everything, but when you are trying to get a colony to accept a queen, if it is something that they have raised, they're going to accept it much more readily than anything else. So, for instance, if I'm trying to introduce a queen, even a mated queen, in a colony that has queen cells that are about ready to hatch, oftentimes they won't accept that queen because they know they're about ready to have their own queen hatching. You have to make them desperately hopeless. There is no other option for them to accept that queen. Now, oftentimes, if the genetics are so different, they will let her lay just enough where they have eggs so they can, and then they'll kill her, they'll ball her, and then try to raise another queen off of their eggs. And it doesn't make sense because it's still going to be that queen's genetics. However, that happens often. To get them to accept it, when you remove all hope to make them absolutely desperate, then your chances of acceptance go way up. The most difficult bee to place in a hive, bar none, is a virgin, a live virgin. Tracy was telling me he had a couple of you had some success with some virgins this year too.
What I did was I had some virgin queens, I had some mating nukes, and I had 3 hives that they tried to requeen and they weren't successful. So they hadn't had a queen in there in quite some time. I caught the virgin queen up in this, and I went to the entrance of the queenless colony, and I set this on the bottom board, and I opened it up, and the virgin queen crawled out and went inside that hive.
From the entrance.
From the entrance, inside into the entrance.
And you made sure that there was no cells.
Exactly. Well, it had been a couple of weeks since there was no cells.
Yeah, so they were desperate.
Desperate. And I'm 3 for 3 this year with doing that. It's the first time I've done it. I've read about it some. And it's so anyway, it's so far I'm 100%. Yes, yes. She's still a virgin, but we're talking about that hive accepting this queen.
Right.
So
that's the hardest, that is the most difficult introduction, is a virgin to another hive. A queen cell that has not been hatched, you have a high acceptance because it hatches inside the hive. And they view that as, hey, this is one of ours because it hatches inside the hive. A mated queen is more difficult than a queen cell. And again, you got to make sure that colony is without any swarm cells, any emergency cells. There is no queen cells at all. And if there is, then it's 50-50. And it is, so that's why my nooks are, that queen is, that's her offspring. That's her, that is, she has been in that colony before I sell it. And so those frames of brood are hers.
I'm just saying, if you have a hive that lost the queen,
Mhm.
but you have another hive that has a queen cell that hasn't hatched yet, and move that into
Yes.
that,
That'll work.
and let it hatch into
Yes.
that hive,
Yes.
they should take it, no problem.
Yes. That would work because that queens, if it hatches in their hive, they view that as theirs. It's gotta be, and the only way, I've never heard until what he was telling me about, hey, you can have a virgin walk in the front door. And that'll work, and that makes sense because that would be a normal way for them to, when they're entering into a colony, so the acceptance would go up. But it's very different. It is. We've been doing this a while and we have in our, we take all of our cells out of that starter when they're capped, we put them in an incubator, okay? Day 11, we better have them already in those mating nooks. If that cell isn't in, usually day 9, we're taking them out and putting them in the mating nooks for that, to make sure that that cell is hatching in that nook. Because if that cell hatches in the incubator and we had a virgin queen, man, it's like 90% of the time they won't accept the virgin. That's how bad it is. And so we've never done the front door thing, so that's,
Well,
try that.
when you look at it from the natural way that a hive requeens, the cell hatches in the hive. They're gonna accept that, no matter what the genetics are, okay? The next way is you've got a colony that's completely hopeless, no queen, there's nothing they can make a queen out of. A virgin walks in the front door, because virgin goes out, flies, and comes back, just like a regular bee does. And so like, oh, there's no queen, here comes one walking in the front door, and they're happy with it, because it's not mated. So it doesn't have the pheromone levels, it's a normal thing to have a virgin queen fly in the front end. So it's just closer to their nature.
Somebody else.
What's that, I don't understand what I'm mating them, because if she still has to leave.
No, mating nook is just, a smaller version of, that's a small box, small frames, and that's designed just for queen rearing. That's a mating nook.
Okay.
Some people use,
Just rearing.
yeah, because we're raising
Not
queens.
mating.
No,
Okay,
they
that's
don't,
what I was trying to figure out.
yeah, they mate at the drone congregation area, the DCA. Outside, and they go on 4 different flights mate with 4 different drones per flight. Kind of hussies, just out there doing their thing, and then it takes them about a week, they're off their window, and that's the thing about a virgin, you can't hang on to them very long. So if you got them in an incubator or whatever, clock is ticking. So that's why you don't want to let them hatch out unless they're in a colony. Because they got about a 10-day window to mate, and that's it. And if they don't do it, they're poorly mated, if they only got on one flight, got some bad weather coming, or it's, whatever it might be, then then they have a half-life. They don't last as long, they'll run out of the fertilized eggs, and then, and that colony knows it. They're gonna supersede her.
Can I throw a huge wrench in this whole?
Why not?
Okay, so I had some swarms. And they were large swarms, they were too big to leave in the meat box. So I moved them into a regular beef. Have them separated and sit on within my bee yard, and I got into them a couple times and I'm not seeing any eggs or anything. And so I'm thinking, well, somehow I ended up with virgin queens. They're off on their mating flights. Well, I got in a week ago. Heidi, where are you? Heidi here. Anyway, I had a conversation with her. So I get into one of my hives that was a swarm, and I'm in laying worker. And it's frame after frame after frame of popcorn drones. So what I did, hopefully this will work. I know that there's different issues with being able to introduce a queen into a laying worker hive, whether they'll accept it or not. So one of the things that was suggested was the newspaper method, where you combine a strong hive with your laying worker hive.
Good way to ruin a good hive.
And right, so I thought, okay, well, success rate on that might not be so good. So I thought, okay, there's the other option of taking your laying worker hive, taking all the bees, dumping them out. So what I did was I drove them 0.2 of a mile from my house, shook them all out on the ground, brought my hive back.
Some of
set
them
down.
beat you home.
Some of them were, yeah, they were. But then what I did was I took 2 screen boxes. They were quilt boxes that I made. And I just made it, put them face to face. So I have my laying worker box. I've got space where there's airflow and screens. And then I put a nuke on top of that in a box. And I gave them 2 separate entrances. One is an entrance in the front, the other one's an entrance in the back. So I kind of did a combination of the newspaper method and the dump your bees method. So I don't know.
You know, that's, an idea that the laying worker takes place when there's no queen mandibular pheromone. Okay, so, and when they've been without that pheromone for usually a couple weeks after the last brood hatches. And now a swarm, there's no brood. So what you had was subsequent swarms. A hive will swarm many times. You can have up to 4 swarms if it's a very large colony. So the first swarm is the mated queen. And then subsequent swarms are virgins that have hatched it. And so if there's a number of virgins that have hatched in that colony after the first swarm, well, they'll swarm again. If there's enough, and then some just, it's genetics, and some of them genetics, they don't know when to shut down. They just or swarm until you have nothing left but a little handful of bees. And that's, some of them do that. So to remedy that laying worker issue, it's very difficult. It is, and there's some great suggestions online. I've read a lot of them. I've tried a few things. If you have time and you want to try to remedy that, you shared a really good way that, and you in fact had success,
Success with this.
but it takes time.
Yeah, I don't do it now because I've got 31 hives and I just don't have time. Guys,
That's introducing a frame
every week, 1 frame of fresh brood right in the middle. Make sure it's mixed brood, all the way from eggs to
You have to have open larvae,
Open.
because that's where the
enclosed larvae.
queen mandibular pheromones and open larvae.
And you want to make sure you have all 3 because you want eggs for them. One of the things that'll stop them is they'll start feeding and taking care of this brood and not your cells with 5 different queen cell eggs in it. Okay. The other thing is an egg, an open brood, and closed brood all give off a different smell. And that's why they get to be a laying worker, because there's no smell. The smell is wrong. Okay. So 1 week, put 1 in. The second week, you put another 1 in. And when I've done it, at the end of the second week, I didn't have laying workers, and they started making queen cells out of the second week, because all of those pheromones suppress their ovaries and they stop. So it took 3 weeks to get it turned around and a good queen cell going and all that. Well, an adult bee only lives 6 weeks, so half of the hive is gone already. So you spend a lot of time, a lot of energy, usually 3 frames of brood you've stolen from somewhere else, and then you really don't end up with that much at the end. So,
I figured.
So those 3 frames of brood, you could have made a really decent
Right. So I had a really strong nuke, and they had to put it in deep, but there's this much space between them, screened, so they got a different entry. So what I'm hoping is that the pheromones that are coming from that upper box
Yeah.
will over
It'll
time.
have the same effect as dropping in a frame of
Right.
brood. Yeah.
If
So,
I was to do what you did, I would have put the nuke in a full-size box on the bottom. Then I would have put like a layer of metal screen, like for a screen door that they can't get through.
That's why.
And then I would have put the laying workers on top, because the natural airflow is in and up. So if you've got the nuke up here with a bunch of airspace, I'm not really sure how much of this pheromone's getting all the way down there.
Okay.
yeah,
It's
put the
pretty
lane
close
worker
to
on
my,
top.
the only opening I have on my top. The one that was the new is just the little tiny opening, and they have to go in and out of that opening to get into that top box. So I'm hoping that there's enough enclosure.
Yeah, well, document that because that's a really interesting idea, because that would be something that if it works, something like that works, well, it would be a really great fix. There's another thing, what they call a double screened board. And it's just a whole thicker board with two screens on each side, so the bees can't even touch each other.
Right.
And that will do the same thing, will allow the pheromones.
Yeah, that's basically it. I just have a bigger space because I just.
Right.
Sure.
Two of my quilt boxes.
Right on.
Dump the wood shavings out, put them face to face.
Mhm.
So there's two layers
Right.
of screen if they're.
You remember that book that you recommended to everybody, Piping Hot Bees and Boisterous? I just read this week the chapter that queen pheromone is transmitted 95% of it by touch, not by air. So it's, you're gonna get some, but not a lot. I don't know how much that's really gonna turn around the laying worker. but
Yeah,
because of it.
yeah. Or you don't want to do damage the other way.
Report back.
Yeah, okay. So then anyway, if you have a laying worker, that's basically, I used to shake them out, but then move the box, but then they would beg their way in other hives, and sometimes that'd be okay. There's times I would shake them out right in front of another hive, a really strong hive, but I've ruined some hives. Them laying workers go in a person, Doug knows that. Doug's ruined half a dozen hives trying to fix laying workers by shaking them and rolling in. They roll in and just wreck another hive. So what I do is I reduce them all the way down to 2 frames and just let them die. I'll leave the box there, reduce them down, just 2 frames in the middle. And you got 2 months and they're gone. And that way I don't have issues with wax moth eating up a bunch of other frames. I don't have them drawing out drone comb on a bunch of other frames, because they'll do that. They'll wreck frames by drawing the drone comb out in perfectly good brood comb. And it just messes everything up. So, but it's kind of hard if you're a backyard beekeeper and one of your hives went queenless and you didn't catch it. Now it's laying worker. What do? I get it. You want to try to fix it. But here's the thing, you throw a lot of resources at it, like you did, it may or may not work. That's not a sure thing. So,
It's all like little experiments.
but yours, you're not using any other resources, so I like that. So if they, the only other thing is, will it wreck the other hive? That would be the only question. But if they're not touching each other, I don't know.
They're not touching them, they've got.
Yeah, and usually the laying workers can fly. They can fly, so. I've proven that many times.
At first they thought that they didn't fly, that's why they said shake them out. Then they just crawl along the ground and wouldn't be able to get anywhere and die, but that proved to be false.
Okay, anybody else?
If I had it to do over again, I would pick up that hive and take it 10 miles away and dump all the bees out and bring it back. And be done with it. So 10 miles, they can't get back, they don't know where they are, and I'd be done with it.
That's why I don't tell anybody where mine are. Spicy hive, who's got let's talk a little bit about spicy hives. Okay, I got some information on our veterans beekeeping Club, and those of you that had some spicy hives in the Fruta area, all of a sudden they're showing up. There was a beekeeper that was running Africanized bees in the valley. And I found that out, I was a little bit upset because I've had some issues with some spicy hives, and it was in that area. They just, especially some of my open mating, and I figured I finally found out why. And so they're populating, and that was fairly close to one of the DCAs. I've mapped 6 of the DCAs in the valley, and that was close. So I'm sure that those colonies were populating. Supposedly, they are all gone now because there was enough complaints, people that found out, and there was neighbors that had some issues with pets dying. Because the bees they're that aggressive, they're very aggressive. Drone congregation area, that's where the queens mate. So that's why I was coming up with a few spicy colonies, because the DCA had some Africanized drones. And how we found out is one of our veteran beekeepers has a couple of spicy hives. I'm not talking about spicy, I'm talking off the chain bees from hell. These are bad. They chased me down for about 600 yards, couldn't get away from them. It's clouds. It's bad. Okay, it's Texas Africanized issues. And so basically we took the queen, squished her, requeened part of them, and they're okay. And then the other ones, and then we were gonna haul off the other 2 sets that didn't get a queen. We were just gonna take the other half, but they requeened. And one of the 2 that were left that requeened, one of them is halfway okay, the other one is still off the chain nuts. So it's, even after they requeen, half that allele is just, it's terrible. You take the lid off, you don't even have to crack the inner cover, the hole in the inner cover, they're just, I mean, every bee in the hive's coming out and it's on you, just cloud. And they're not just, hey, how you doing? It's, we're going to kill you. And
They find any form you have in any zippo.
yeah, and then, I took 20 stings before I got back to the truck. That's how crazy. So it's like, that, and I found out that's what's going on. So there's probably some feral hives in that area. So if you're in that area, 22 and what's that H?
No.
No, L, yeah, it's L.
Well, it's not 22 in Elroy, because that's my house. And they ended my.
No, it's the other direction, so 20, 24, closer to 24.
East.
Yeah,
It's like
yeah, 20, yeah, all right, 23.
So this.
So it's right in that area.
This person brought the Africanized bees in here?
Yeah. They were running them. They're mite free. They never have mite problems, ever. And the honey production's off the chain. They'll produce twice as much honey as anybody else.
But they'll kill you while you're trying to do.
It is, you have to wear a respirator. You have to wear a respirator because it's the CO2 is what they're attracted to. So if you're wearing a respirator, then you can work them. They're still ornery, but they don't try to totally kill you. Yeah, they are, but then I don't.
Do you think that they'll travel throughout the valley?
I hope not. I hope not. They got them shut down. So when I found that out, it was like, why?
Yeah.
Why?
There was an, it's time in Palisades about 20 years ago. They euthanized it.
Yeah.
So.
There's, I read an article, it's probably been 12 years ago or something like that. That if an Africanized colony makes it here in Western Colorado, if they go over winter, 90% chance they're gonna die, first of all.
Yeah.
If they don't die, the cold brings out the epigenetics and the European genes, and then they just start acting like European honeybees. So we won't ever have a real where they run over everything and we have all Africanized bees like they do in Texas. It's just
Yeah,
never
they
happened.
won't propagate. That's true. And that's why we don't have them this far north, is because of that. But these were overwintered though. These were overwintered and they were that.
Yeah, we don't want to test that. theory.
No.
Let's just-
So what I'm saying is it's the worst one I've ever tracked.
So Friday after the hailstorm, about 2 hours after the hailstorm, I was walking by one of my hives, they were still pissed.
Oh, yeah. They were still angry yesterday. Across the whole valley, every lid I cracked, they were still ticked.
They don't like knocking on the highways.
I guess not.
For like 10 minutes.
Okay, very good. Anybody else? Good. Thank you.
Thank you. I read your email.